Hello Okita, this is Pacific Waves from RNZ Pacific. I'm Susana Suisuiki. Coming up, Mariana Islands' long-serving congressman bids adieu. Also,
So a lot of the plants that we started with are actually medicinal plants that are used by traditional healers.
the cure for deadly illnesses may lie in Samoa. And later,
they will come hard on us. So I'm training my girls to go hard on them and do their best.
Fiji Sevens look to restamp their mark. The Commonwealth of the Northern Marianas' long-serving U.S. Congressman Gregorio Sablan has retired. He served for 16 years, the territory's first congressman. He announced he was retiring from politics in Saipan on Thursday night in a public meeting. Don Wiseman spoke with our CNMI correspondent Mark Rubago, who looked back at Mr. Sablan's career.
First non-voting delegate. The position was created, I think, before 2008 as part of a deal. The U.S. takes over U.S. immigration. We used to have a Washington representative, but he's not part of the Congress. He's just like, not a figurehead, just like, as the title suggests, a representative of the CNMI in Washington, D.C. That position got elevated before 2008. When we had all these discussions with the U.S. government, the federal government, about taking over immigration. And one of the concessions was the CNMI will have non-voting delegate. When you mean non-voting delegate, he doesn't get a vote. Originally, he doesn't get a vote during House sessions, but I believe he got a vote in panels and committee meetings. So yeah, he's retiring after 16 years, 8 terms. He was one of the most senior in the House before he decided to hang it up.
What are the greatest achievements he can point to in his time there?
I think basically before he came into office, the CNMI's reputation in the U.S. mainland capital, in Washington, D.C. in particular, wasn't savory. Back in the 90s, Abramoff and the garment industry, the lobbying, forced labor, all those nasty stuff. Then he came in, he was able to, as he said, change the idea of politicians in Washington, D.C. that the CNMI is not a colony. It's a U.S. territory under a covenant agreement with the US. So it's a commonwealth. And he also was able to bring in much needed federal dollars for the CNMI economy to grow. Before we were getting some, but not as much. As he said in his town hall speech during the meeting, a drizzle became a torrent of funding, especially during Typhoon Yutu and Typhoon Sodilor, which devastated our island. And then subsequently, COVID-19, we got billions of dollars from that.
Yes. Well, of course, the situation has also changed with the geopolitical developments in the Pacific, and suddenly the CNMI is right at the heart of things.
But I think that's a little bit at the tail end of his administration. Another successful story that he was able to weather during his term as congressman for 16 years was the CNMI went under, as I said, U.S. control of immigration. So he was able to give like 2,000, I think, people long-term status. This means these are former contract workers who had kids before 2011 who were given the opportunity to like sort of green cards, but only in the CNMI. So they were given employment authorization status. So a little over 2,000, I think, were benefited from that. And then he was able to ease in the CNMI only transitional period for workers.
A few things I think continue to irk the federal administration through this period. Things like, for instance, cockfighting, and also people flying in from Asia to have their babies and qualifying for American citizenship.
Yes. The cockfighting, I think the Supreme Court already ruled against that. There was a challenge by a former representative, Andrew Salas, and it was thumbed down, basically saying that the federal law trumps local law, even though what you say it's a cultural thing, and then that we are in a commonwealth, U.S. law doesn't apply here. And with the bird tourism, I think the present administration of Governor Arnold I. Palacios is trying to curb that by being more strict in issuing visas. But bird tourism is not only confined in the CNMI, it also happens in the US. Yeah, you cannot basically check everybody who's like 8 months into her term, right? They could easily hide that. So they're trying to fix that with the EVS tap system that is in place right now. It's gonna go in full effect by the end of November. So there's steps towards that.
And Sablan's replacement, who's that?
Sablan's replacement, she's from Tinian. She's a lawyer. She used to head the Commonwealth Ports Authority. Her name is Kimberlyn King-Hines. She ran under the Republican Party during the November 5 election and she won. I think she got 40% of the vote. It was a 5-horse race, so she got not majority, but most of the votes. And she's a lawyer, so she knows her stuff. And she's used to battling the federals. I think she was very successful in stopping the live fire training at one of our islands here at Farallon de Mendinilia. And also full-scale military operations also in Tinian. She was able to stop that. She's a daughter of Tinian. She's a lawyer, and she knows her stuff.
Gregorio Sablan, what's next for him?
I'm going to actually have an interview with him next Thursday, hopefully. I don't know if he's going to retire when you talk about retire politically. I know he wants to still help the community, and he has such a large presence here. There were talks that he wanted to run for governor during mid-2010s or something like that. We don't know. He's, I think, 74 or 75. I don't know. If Trump and Biden can still run at a more advanced age, then I don't know if his political career is over.
For centuries, Samoa's traditional healers have harnessed the power of the country's native plants as remedies for village ailments. Now, scientists at the Scientific Research Centre of Samoa are putting those plants under the microscope to unlock and understand how this traditional knowledge works. The labs and lush gardens filled with plants could hold the secret to battling diabetes, HIV, and cancer. ABC's Adele Fruin has the story.
So we're now walking over to the Ross Medicinal Garden. Annie Trisunga is showing me through a garden full of secrets. It's near the base of a mountain that overlooks the city of Apia in Samoa, my home. The clouds are low and it's drizzling, but I'm determined to get a look at the plants here because their secrets could be life-changing. The garden we're trudging through holds knowledge that has been around for centuries. These plants have long been used to heal people outside of the Western healthcare system. In fact, well before that system existed in Samoa. But their health-giving properties are closely guarded by traditional healers, often skeptical of the scientists who've come looking for answers. That doesn't mean researchers have stopped trying, and local scientists in particular have been persistent, wanting to tap into traditional knowledge to make new discoveries. Trying to prove that this plant that we've been using for generations, why is it so useful for our ailments and our diseases? Annie grew up in Salofata, a coastal village on the island of Upolu with sandy beaches and coral reefs, home to a diverse marine ecosystem. But it took leaving Salofata to study in New Zealand for Annie to fully appreciate the richness of the flora and fauna that she'd been raised around. You know, when you grow up in something, it's the norm, so you don't think it's as awesome as it is. You're just used to growing up in a green environment, growing up surrounded by flora and fauna. So I don't think it was something that I really acknowledged or thought it was so great until probably when I left and then came back. You realize how blessed we are to be surrounded by so much native flora and fauna that we shouldn't take it for granted. After 13 years looking after the environment, Annie is well aware of the value of Samoa's flora and fauna. Since 2019, she has been overseeing the SROS team, looking for plants that could treat diseases that are on the rise in the Pacific. We just decided to do a massive screening of as many plants as we can because we don't know yet. We don't know if it has bioactive compounds. With hundreds of plants to put under the microscope in search of health-giving properties, SROS had to find a place to start. Luckily, Samoa is not only rich in plant life, it also has a huge wealth of traditional knowledge. So a lot of the plants that we started with are actually medicinal plants that are used by traditional healers. The practice of healing in Samoa goes back thousands of years. The healers that provide herbal remedies are called taulasea. Each village might have several taulasea, each specializing in a different illness. I know traditional healers, some have been my neighbors and so forth. Definitely they have a place in our communities and in Samoa. The taulasea keep their healing methods closely guarded in keeping with their ancient role. But scientists do know many of the plants the healers use, and there is some consistency. Schross wants to prove whether these plants really do have the healing properties that Taulāsea say they do.
We don't want to go against our traditional knowledge, but it's actually enhancing it or proving why it's been effective for so long.
There are actually 3 teams of plant investigators at Schross, each searching for useful compounds to tackle a different illness: diabetes, cancer, and antimicrobial resistance.
So this is actually the environment lab, but it's also the lab that we do the anti-diabetes part of the bioprospecting work. So I'll just take you through some of the...
First stop is the anti-diabetes lab.
It's not a secret that diabetes is really quite prevalent in Samoa now.
According to the World Health Organization, about 1 in 5 adults here are living with type 2 diabetes.
That was definitely a big concern for us.
In type 2 diabetes, too much sugar is circulating in the blood. People with the condition must monitor their blood sugar levels, adjust their diet, and take medication for the rest of their lives. Anything that could make managing this disease easier would help millions of people. The anti-diabetes lab is stocked with test tubes and shelf upon shelf of bottles filled with different solutions.
So unfortunately, we've already extracted all of our plants. We don't have any of the actual physical plants here, but we have them in extract form.
The team wants to find compounds that are more effective than the drugs currently on the market. Doing this is tedious work. They start off with branches, leaves, maybe even bark, and condense them down into an extract. Which plant the materials belong to is confidential. So when Annie shows me a tray of test tubes, I have no idea what I'm actually looking at.
So we extract them in the same volume of alcohol, but because of different levels of chlorophyll and so forth, like how they look as an extract form really ranges. So some are really light brown and some are more dark green to black. And then red, this is an interesting color.
Once they've got these many-colored plant extracts, they can start the actual screening process.
So I'll also introduce while we're here, Mace. Mace, come here.
Annie calls over a reluctant researcher who has been trying to back away into the corner to avoid the microphone. Before we interrupted him, Mace had been hard at work unleashing plant extracts on an enzyme responsible for high blood sugar.
As you can see here, when it's yellow, that means the reaction is happening. The enzyme is thriving, which means we don't want that, which means you are having high blood sugar, but we want the colorless one. So when it's colorless, which means the plant is stopping or limited the growth of the enzyme.
Once Mace finds a plant extract that is acting on the enzyme and turning the liquid clear, he will eventually move on to yet another step, purification, to isolate the exact compound responsible.
That's a whole other process. So
purification is achieved through many rounds of chromatography, which is the process of separating the many compounds in a plant extract.
The purification is very slow, yeah. I myself get really impatient. It's just because, for example, a plant can have hundreds of compounds in it.
It's not enough to know whether a plant extract is effective. The researchers need to isolate the exact compound responsible in order to figure out whether it's something new or something that's already been discovered.
So we know that it works, but we don't know what's in it that works. So it's that part, the purification, trying to find the bioactive compound in that plant. Then once you have that bioactive compound, you'll know whether it's a new discovery or not. So that's the exciting part, but it's definitely time-consuming.
One of the reasons this process takes so long is because the researchers don't have all the equipment they need. They have to fly all the way to New Zealand to complete the purification process.
And doing the latter phases, using their equipment that costs millions of dollars that we don't have in Samoa, yeah.
We leave the anti-diabetes team and make our way to another teal building.
We'll stop by the antimicrobial team first.
There are more people at work here, and there's more equipment. Microscopes and beakers, and burettes used for titrations. The people on this team are trying to find compounds capable of fighting bacteria that have become resistant to the drugs we currently have.
Hi.
I'm good.
full transparency, one of the scientists on this team is my cousin Ben.
That's my cousin.
He spends most of his time looking for plant extracts that can fight off something called MRSA.
So these are strains of bacteria we get from the hospital that are problematic to causing diseases. So we have it here tested against the extracts.
We know that our drugs are less effective against pathogens than they used to be. Samoa is in a vulnerable position, with high infection rates and a limited healthcare system, making new drug discoveries even more urgent.
That's the importance of our research. It benefits the community and Samoan people, and then also in the Pacific.
This is exactly what Annie is hoping for. Novel compound discovered by Stross for the benefit of Samoans. But keeping discoveries within the country requires a surprising level of secrecy.
So we're not supposed to name any of the plants that we're working on. So even our CEO and our minister don't know. Only the research team knows the names. So everything is coded when we give reports. Everything is coded if one of our scientists have to go to New Zealand, for example. And so even the New Zealand team wouldn't know.
This is meant to protect the discoveries of Samoan scientists from overseas scientists dropping into the Pacific nation, taking traditional knowledge and claiming it for themselves.
So a bad thing about that is that the benefits really don't come back to Samoa or the communities where they access those.
Keeping the names of the plants quiet until they apply for patents means Samoa will benefit financially from any products that come from their discoveries.
So I think it's also a chance of Samoa to lead their own bioprospecting work or the biomedicinal work. That way the benefits always comes back to the communities and Samoa.
The wait is over for Rugby Sevens fans as the 2025 HSBC Sevens Series kicks off with the Dubai Sevens on Saturday. Interest and excitement in Rugby Sevens rose to a high at the Paris Olympics with record-breaking crowd attendance and worldwide TV viewership. The Pacific Islands have just one team each in the men's and women's competition, that being Fiji. As Elias Otora reports, the Fijians are in tough pools in each competitions and are looking to rebuild as they work towards restamping their mark in the world of sevens rugby.
Fiji men's sevens rugby team coach Osea Kolinisau says the goal for his team is to win this weekend's Dubai Sevens tournament. Kolinisau says that will mean the team playing to their game plan as he looks forward to a good weekend in Pool C with New Zealand, the United States and Spain.
Like I said, focus on our standard, and we want to make sure that we execute all that we train for, especially on our set piece and our defensive shape. Like I said, going into every tournament, the goal is to always win, and there's no use going if the goal is not to win. And I'm looking forward to a good weekend this weekend from the boys.
Kolinisau says playing to their standards and the Fijian style will be the key.
I'd like to see the boys play as a team, and I'd like to see them execute all our defensive setups, our attacking patterns, and I'd like to see what we practice that the boys have fully understand, and that we play to our level and we play the Fiji rugby style.
Fijiana women's coach Timothy Volvola has a total of 9 new players in his team for this weekend and says he knows they will be in for their baptism of fire, especially as they kick off their pool games against Ireland on Saturday evening before they face Australia and China.
They will come hard on us. So I'm training my girls to go hard on them and do their best, their ability for representing Fiji, and work hard from there. And we respect Ireland. And the girls have been training hard to face Ireland comes the first game.
Volvola says the Dubai heat is a challenge, but he is confident his team can handle it, as the weather is similar to Fiji's conditions.
For the weather, it's very similar to us in Fiji. We've been training in Fiji at 11 o'clock. I've been started doing that from the last week. Acclimatize the girls, the weather in Dubai, and it's very similar. It won't affect the girls' performance when it comes this weekend.
Meanwhile, men's Olympic champions France will be looking to retain their Sevens champions crown after they defeated Sevens League winners Argentina to claim the inaugural men's title earlier this year. South Africa will also be looking to continue their winning form in Dubai, where they had won 5 consecutive titles and 7 of the last 8 tournaments. In the women's competition, 2-time Olympic winners New Zealand will be challenging Australia again for the top title, with the Wallaroo Sevens team having won the last 4 women's titles at the Sevens Stadium. Pool matches kick off on Saturday evening, with final scheduled for Monday morning, New Zealand time.
That's Pacific Waves for today. For all episodes, head over to rnz.co.nz/Pacific. We're also on Spotify, Apple and iHeartRadio. From myself and the RNZ Pacific team, tō whā soifua.